The emergency beacon cut through the silence of deep space like a scream. Dr. Emma Walsh jolted awake in her research pod aboard the exploration vessel Crimson Dawn, her heart pounding as red warning lights bathed her quarters in hellish crimson. 3 sharp blasts echoed through the ship's corridors, the signal for all hands to battle stations. She stumbled into the main corridor where crew members rushed past her, their faces grim with purpose. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated, slightly as the massive engines roared to life, pushing them toward whatever crisis awaited. Emma had spent 5 years studying alien civilizations on the rim worlds, but nothing had prepared her for the raw terror she saw in her crewmates' eyes. The bridge buzzed with frantic activity when she arrived. Captain Alex Reed stood hunched over the communications console, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of incoming transmissions. His gray hair was disheveled, and dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept in days. Around him, officers worked frantically at their stations, processing data streams that painted an increasingly horrific picture. "Report," Emma said, approaching the science station where Lieutenant Tom Bradley was analyzing long-range sensor data. "It's bad, Doc," Tom whispered, his voice barely audible above the bridge's electronic hum. "Real bad. We've lost contact with 17 colonies in the outer rim. Complete radio silence from all of them." Emma felt her stomach drop. 17 colonies meant millions of people, families, children, entire communities that had spent decades building new lives on distant worlds. The exploration fleet had left these settlements thriving just 6 months ago. Now they were silent. Captain Reed's voice cut through the bridge chatter. "Patch through the emergency transmission from New Geneva Station. Everyone needs to hear this." The bridge fell silent as static filled the air, followed by a desperate voice crackling through the speakers. The transmission was fragmented, interrupted by explosions and the sound of hull breaches. "This is Colony Commander Lisa Park. We are under attack by unknown vessels. Repeat, we are under attack. They gave no warning, no demands. They're targeting civilian populations. Oh God, they're glassing the entire surface. The children, the schools, they're all..." The transmission ended in a burst of static. Emma watched the color drain from every face on the bridge. New Geneva had been home to 3 million people, including the largest human school system in the sector. Now it was gone. "Sir," Communications Officer Maria Santos called out, her voice shaking. "I'm receiving similar final transmissions from 14 other colonies. Pattern analysis suggests coordinated strikes across a 1,000 light-year front." Captain Reed straightened, his jaw clenched. Who did this? What species has the capability to mount simultaneous attacks across that much space? Emma moved to her workstation and began analyzing the tactical data. Years of studying galactic civilizations had taught her to recognize attack patterns and weapon signatures. What she found made her hands tremble as she typed. "Captain, these weapon signatures match Thracian Empire technology, but the scale..." She paused, double-checking her readings. "Sir, this wasn't a raid or a territorial dispute. This was systematic extermination. They hit every human settlement in the region within a 6-hour window." The bridge fell silent again. Everyone knew about the Thracian Empire, a confederation of 7 alien species that controlled a significant portion of the galaxy's core regions. They were known for their military precision and cold efficiency, but they had never shown hostility toward human expansion before. In fact, most diplomatic contacts had been cordial, even friendly. "Ma'am," Tom called out from his station, "I'm detecting massive debris fields at each colony site, but the patterns are wrong for standard orbital bombardment. They're too organized, too complete." Emma joined him at his console, studying the sensor readings from the destroyed settlements. What she saw made her blood run cold. "Tom, zoom in on Sector 7 Alpha. Focus on the metallic debris signatures." The display shifted, revealing a detailed analysis of the wreckage orbiting what had once been New Geneva. Emma's xenobiology training helped her recognize something that the tactical officers had missed. Scattered among the debris were structures that didn't belong to human colonies. "Those are collection pods," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The Thracians weren't just destroying the colonies, they were harvesting something. "Captain," Reed moved closer to study the display. Harvesting what? Emma's fingers flew across her workstation as she cross-referenced the pod designs with her database of alien technologies. The answer that emerged made her stomach churn. Biological samples, Captain. These pods are designed for collecting and preserving genetic material and live specimens. The implications hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. The Thracians hadn't just killed millions of humans. They had taken thousands more for unknown purposes. This wasn't war in any conventional sense. This was something far more sinister. "Sir?" Maria Santos interrupted, her face pale as she monitored subspace communications. "I'm intercepting Thracian military channels. They're discussing the attacks." "Put it through the translators," Reed ordered. Alien voices filled the bridge, their clicking and whistling translated into cold, clinical human speech. Containment protocol successful. Human pest expansion halted across 17 sectors. Specimens collected for further study. Recommend expanding operation to prevent future infestations. Emma felt something cold settle in her chest as the full scope of what had happened became clear. The Thracians hadn't seen humans as equals or even as enemies. They had seen them as pests to be exterminated, with a few samples kept for study like insects in a laboratory. "Captain," she said, her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. "This wasn't random. They specifically targeted human colonies because they viewed our expansion as a threat to their territory. But more than that, they planned this as a demonstration. They wanted to show the galaxy that humans could be easily destroyed." Reed nodded grimly. "Well, they got their demonstration. Question is, what do we do about it?" Before anyone could answer, the communications board lit up, with incoming transmissions from across human space. Earth Command, Mars Defense Force, Luna Station. Every human military installation was going to full alert. News of the massacres was spreading through human space like wildfire. Emma watched the tactical display as friendly signals began appearing throughout human territory. Ships were launching from every human world, heading toward the outer rim. The response was faster and more coordinated than anything she had ever seen from humanity's normally fractured governments. "Sir," Tom reported, his voice filled with, I'm reading massive fleet movements from every human system. It looks like everyone's mobilizing." Captain Reed studied the display for a long moment, then turned to address his crew. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute certainty. "The Thracians wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy. They wanted to show everyone that humanity could be crushed whenever they decided we were becoming inconvenient." He paused, watching as more human ships appeared on the long-range sensors. "They're about to learn that their demonstration worked, just not the way they planned." Emma understood what he meant. The galaxy had just seen what happened when you tried to exterminate humanity. Now they were about to see what happened when humanity decided to respond. The Crimson Dawn joined the growing fleet, heading toward the devastated colonies to begin the hunt for answers. But Emma knew they would find more than answers in the wreckage. They would find the justification for whatever came next. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. It was about to pay the price. The news reached Earth 3 days after the last transmission from New Geneva fell silent. President Maria Santos sat in the emergency session of the Global Defense Council, watching as holographic displays showed the scope of the disaster. 17. Red dots marked where human colonies had thrived just days before. Now they were nothing but debris fields and radiation scars on dead worlds. Admiral Torres stood at the head of the conference table, his dress uniform crisp despite the sleepless nights since the crisis began. His weathered hands gestured toward the tactical displays as he briefed the assembled leaders of humanity's scattered governments. Mars Colonial Authority, Luna Corporate Council, Europa Mining Consortium. Rivals who had spent decades arguing over trade routes and mining rights now sat together in stunned unity. "The death toll stands at 8.7 million confirmed casualties," Torres said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the numbers. "That includes the entire populations of New Geneva, Terra Nova, and New Yorkshire. Preliminary analysis suggests no survivors from the primary target zones." President Santos watched the faces around the table. She had spent 30 years in politics. But nothing had prepared her for the raw grief and fury she saw in her colleagues' eyes. These weren't just statistics, they were friends, family members, entire communities that had volunteered to push humanity's borders deeper into unknown space. General Harrison Kane sat at the far end of the table, his retirement interrupted by the crisis. At 75, he was humanity's most experienced military commander, a veteran of the Centauri Wars and the man who had written the tactical manual on interstellar combat. His presence alone told everyone how seriously Earth Command was taking this threat. "What do we know about their capabilities?" Santos asked, though she dreaded the answer. Dr. Emma Walsh's face appeared on the communication screen, transmitting from the investigation fleet now examining the destroyed colonies. "Madam President, we've completed analysis of the attack patterns. The Thracians use coordinated fleet strikes with plasma bombardment weapons. But that's not the worst part." The room fell silent as Walsh's image was replaced by video footage from the colony sites. Twisted metal and glass stretched as far as the cameras could see, but scattered among the ruins were strange structures that looked almost organic. "They didn't just destroy the colonies," Walsh continued. "They harvested genetic samples and captured thousands of civilians before glassing the planets. We've found evidence of collection pods specifically designed for preserving human biological material." The silence in the room was deafening. Santos felt her hands clench into fists as the implications became clear. The Thracians hadn't just committed genocide. They had treated humans like laboratory specimens. "There's more," Walsh's voice continued. "We intercepted Thracian communications during the attacks. They referred to human expansion as a pest infestation that needed to be contained. This wasn't a territorial dispute, Madam President. This was extermination with a purpose." General Kane leaned forward, his gray eyes hard as steel. "What kind of purpose?" "Based on the communication intercepts and the harvesting equipment we believed they were studying human reproduction and expansion patterns. They view our population growth and colonization rate as a threat to galactic stability." Santos stood up, pacing to the massive viewing window that looked out over Earth's sprawling cities. Somewhere down there, families were receiving death notifications for loved ones who had died light years away. Children were asking why their parents weren't coming home from the colonies. The lucky ones, anyway. Whole families had been wiped out together. "How many other species were involved?" she asked without turning around. Admiral Torres consulted his datapad. "Intelligence suggests at least 6 other major galactic powers provided support or coordination. The Kalari Syndicate, the Vorthan Republic, the Crystalline Hegemony. They all knew this was coming." The room erupted in angry voices as the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. This hadn't been a single enemy attacking human space. This had been a coordinated effort by multiple alien civilizations to halt human expansion through mass murder. Santos turned back to face the room, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Enough." The arguing stopped immediately. They wanted to send a message about humanity's place in the galaxy. They wanted to show everyone that we could be easily destroyed whenever we became inconvenient. She activated the holographic display, showing the current positions of human fleets throughout known space. What she saw filled her with grim satisfaction. Ships were launching from every human world, converging on rally points throughout the sector. The response was faster and more unified than anything in human history. "Admiral Torres, what's our current military readiness?" "Madam President, we have 437 capital ships combat ready, with another 200 coming online within the week. Mars Defense Force is contributing 300 vessels, and the outer colonies are sending everything they have." General Kane smiled for the first time since the crisis began. "It's beautiful in a way. They wanted to demonstrate human weakness. Instead, they've done something no human leader has ever accomplished. They've united every faction of humanity under a single cause." Santos nodded, understanding the significance. For decades, human space had been fractured by political divisions, corporate rivalries, and colonial independence movements. Earth, Mars, and the outer worlds had spent more time arguing with each other than exploring new territories. The alien attack had changed everything. "What about our special projects?" she asked Torres quietly. The Admiral's expression grew serious. "The Deep Strike Protocol has been activated. All black site research facilities are coming online. We're implementing technologies that have been classified for 30 years. Santos had hoped never to use the Deep Strike Protocol. It represented humanity's darkest preparations, weapons and tactics developed in secret, based on the assumption that someday humanity might face extinction. The program had studied every known alien species, mapped their weaknesses, and developed strategies specifically designed to exploit human advantages in warfare. "Ma'am," Walsh's voice interrupted from the communication screen. "There's something else you need to know. We found personal logs from the colonists during the final hours. The Thracians broadcast messages before each attack explaining that humans bred too quickly and expanded too aggressively for galactic peace." She paused, and Santos could see the anger in the young scientist's eyes even across the light years. "They told our people that their deaths were necessary to maintain cosmic balance. They said humanity needed to be taught humility." The room fell silent again, but this time the quiet was different. It wasn't the shocked silence of grief. It was the focused quiet of predators planning a hunt. General Kane stood up, his old frame still carrying the authority that had made him legend. "Madam President, request permission to recall all deep space reconnaissance fleets. If we're going to respond to this, we need to do it right." "What do you recommend, General?" "They studied us for years before this attack. They know our standard military doctrine, our fleet compositions, our typical response patterns. But there are things about human warfare they never learned, because we've never had to use them." Santos understood immediately. Humanity's expansion into space had been largely peaceful, with only minor conflicts against pirates and corporate rivals. The galaxy had never seen what humans were capable of when they were truly threatened. "The Thracians wanted to teach us a lesson about our place in the galaxy," Kane continued. "I think it's time we returned the favor." Santos looked around the room at the assembled leaders of human civilization. She saw determination in their faces, and something else. A cold, calculating anger that reminded her why humans had climbed to the top of Earth's food chain. "Admiral Torres, send word to all human fleets. We're not just responding to an attack. We're going to war." She activated the emergency broadcast system, preparing to address every human settlement simultaneously. Across known space, families gathered around communication screens to hear their leader's response to the greatest crisis in human history. "My fellow humans," Santos began, her voice carrying to worlds light years apart. 3 days ago, alien forces murdered 8.7 million of our people. They called it pest control. They said we needed to learn our place." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle across human space. "Today, we teach the galaxy what happens when you mistake human patience for weakness. What happens when you confuse our desire for peace with inability to wage war." They wanted to show the universe that humanity could be easily destroyed. Santos smiled, and there was nothing warm about it. They're about to learn that their demonstration worked, just not the way they planned. The first Thracian outpost died in perfect silence. Commander Beth Hayes crouched in the maintenance shaft above the alien communication center, watching through thermal imaging as her team moved into position. 6 months of raids had taught her that Thracians always posted guards at the same locations, always followed the same patrol routes, always expected their enemies to fight like civilized galactic species. They had never fought humans before. Hayes signaled her team with hand gestures, a form of communication no alien species had ever developed. The Thracians relied on electromagnetic signals and pheromone markers, sophisticated but easily detected. Humans used something far more primitive and therefore invisible to advanced alien sensors. The attack lasted exactly 43 seconds. Hayes's team moved through the facility like shadows, neutralizing guards and securing data cores before the enemy even realized they were under attack. By the time the facility's automated distress beacon activated, the humans were already gone, vanishing into the asteroid field they had used to approach undetected. 3 hours later, Thracian reinforcements found their outpost gutted and empty. The communication arrays were destroyed, the data cores wiped, and the survivors left with a message burned into the facility's main bulkhead in human script. "We remember New Geneva." Hayes studied the tactical display aboard her stealth ship, phantom strike as they retreated to their hidden base. This was their 23rd successful raid in 6 weeks, part of a campaign that was driving the Thracian military to the edge of panic. Across their territory, human strike teams were appearing like ghosts, hitting targets that should have been impossible to reach. Commander, her tactical officer Mike Torres reported, long-range sensors are picking up increased Thracian patrol activity. They're tripling guard rotations on critical facilities. Hayes smiled grimly. Fear was spreading through enemy space like a virus, and fear was exactly what she wanted. The Thracians had started this war by trying to terrorize humanity into submission. Now they were learning what real terror felt like. Her communication system chimed with an encrypted message from Admiral Torres back at Earth Command. Hayes read the brief text and felt her smile widen. Operation Nightmare was proceeding exactly as planned across 17 different sectors. The strategy was simple but devastating. Instead of massive fleet engagements that the Thracians expected, humanity was fighting a war of shadows. Small teams struck without warning, inflicted maximum damage, and disappeared before the enemy could respond. Every attack was precisely calculated to create maximum psychological impact while avoiding direct confrontation with superior numbers. "Ma'am," Communications Officer Lisa Park called out, "we're receiving reports from Ghost Team 7. They've successfully infiltrated the Kalari shipyard at Rigel Station." Hayes nodded, pleased but not surprised. The Kalari Syndicate had made the mistake of openly supporting the Thracian attack on human colonies. Now they were learning that humans had very long memories and absolutely no sense of proportional response when it came to genocide. The display screen activated, showing the face of Dr. Emma Walsh broadcasting from the research vessel, Crimson Dawn. "Commander Hayes, we've completed analysis of the data you recovered from the Vorthan Communications Hub. What we found changes everything." Hayes felt her stomach tighten. The raids were going perfectly, but something in Walsh's expression warned of complications. "Report, Doctor." "The attack on our colonies wasn't spontaneous. We found evidence of a coordinated conspiracy involving 7 major galactic powers. They've been planning what they call the Human Containment Protocol for over 3 years." The EOIC bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Hayes had assumed the Thracians were the primary enemy, with the other species providing minor support. Now it appeared the conspiracy was far larger than anyone had imagined. "How extensive was their planning?" Hayes asked. "They studied our expansion patterns, our military doctrine, even our psychological profiles. They knew exactly how they expected humans to respond to the colony attacks, with conventional fleet movements and diplomatic protests. They never anticipated this type of asymmetric warfare." Hayes understood immediately. The aliens had prepared for the humans they thought they knew, peaceful explorers who preferred negotiation to violence. They had never met the humans who emerged when their families were murdered and their children were harvested like specimens. "There's more," Walsh continued. "The Kalari Syndicate wasn't just providing support. They were the ones who suggested targeting civilian populations specifically. They argued that humans would be more likely to surrender if their families were threatened." Hayes felt something cold settle in her chest. The Kalari hadn't just supported genocide. They had recommended it as a strategy. They had specifically targeted human children because they thought it would break human will to fight. "Commander," Mike Torres interrupted. "Incoming priority transmission from General Kane." The display switched to show the weathered face of humanity's supreme military commander. His expression was grim but satisfied as he addressed the assembled strike team leaders. "Ladies and gentlemen, Phase 1 of Operation Nightmare is complete. Thracian military efficiency has dropped by 60% due to security concerns. Their patrol schedules are in chaos, and their commanders are requesting massive reinforcements for facilities that should be perfectly safe." Hayes smiled at the results. Humans had discovered something remarkable about galactic warfare. Most alien species had never learned to fight an enemy they couldn't see or predict. They relied on sophisticated technology and overwhelming firepower, but they had no experience with guerrilla tactics or psychological warfare. "Phase 2 begins immediately," Kane continued. "Intelligence has located the command centers for all 7 conspiracy members. We're moving from harassment to direct action. Every species that participated in the murder of our people will face consequences proportional to their involvement. The general's image was replaced by tactical displays showing targets throughout the galaxy. Hayes recognized some of them, heavily fortified command centers and shipyards that conventional wisdom declared impossible to assault. But conventional wisdom had never accounted for human creativity when it came to warfare. Commander Hayes, Kane's voice continued, your team is assigned to the Kalari primary shipyard at Rigel Station. Intelligence suggests they're building a fleet specifically designed to hunt human settlements. Your orders are to ensure that fleet never launches. Hayes studied the target data, noting the massive defensive installations and patrol schedules. Under normal circumstances, attacking such a facility would require a fleet of capital ships and months of preparation. But these weren't normal circumstances. Understood, General. What are our operational parameters? Total discretion, Commander. The Kalari recommended targeting our children. I leave their fate to your professional judgment. Hayes understood the significance of those words. For months, human forces had been carefully avoiding civilian casualties, maintaining the moral high ground even in the face of genocide. Now the gloves were coming off. Sir, she replied, the Kalari shipyard will not be operational after our visit. Kane nodded approvingly. Remember, people, the galaxy wanted to teach humanity about proportional response. They killed 8.7 million of our civilians to make a point about territorial boundaries. Now we teach them about actual, proportional response. The transmission ended, leaving Hayes alone with her thoughts. She looked around the bridge at her crew, men and women who had volunteered for the most dangerous missions in human space. They had families too, people they loved who could have been among the victims if the aliens had chosen different targets. Ma'am, Lisa Park said quietly, are we really going to escalate to their level? Hayes considered the question carefully. The easy answer was that they were fighting for survival against enemies who had already demonstrated their willingness to commit genocide. But the real answer was more complex. Park, what happened to your sister's family on New Geneva? The younger woman's face went pale. They were vaporized during the orbital bombardment, ma'am. All of them. And what did the Kalari say when they recommended targeting civilian populations? That humans would be easier to control if their families were threatened? Hayes nodded slowly. The difference between them and us isn't that we're more moral. The difference is that we're more effective. They tried to break our will by murdering our families. Instead, they unleashed something they never expected. She activated the ship's intercom system to address the entire crew. All hands, this is the commander. We're heading to Rigel Station to deal with the Kalari shipyard. They helped plan the murder of our people because they thought it would make us weak. Today we show them what human weakness actually looks like. The Phantom Strike turned toward enemy space, joining dozens of other human vessels converging on targets throughout the galaxy. The aliens had wanted to demonstrate humanity's place in the cosmic order. Instead, they had awakened something that would reshape that order permanently. The hunt was about to become an execution. The Kalari shipyard at Rigel Station burned like a dying star against the black of space. Captain Alex Reed watched from the bridge of the Crimson Dawn as secondary explosions rippled through the massive construction facility, each detonation sending debris spinning into the void. What had been the galaxy's most advanced military shipyard 8 hours ago was now nothing but twisted metal and plasma fires. Reed turned to study the tactical display showing the broader battle. Commander Hayes and her strike team had infiltrated the facility with surgical precision, but what followed wasn't surgery. It was amputation. The Kalari had learned too late that humans distinguished between military and civilian targets only when their enemies showed the same courtesy. Sir, Lieutenant Tom Bradley reported from his station. We're receiving surrender broadcasts from the surviving Kalari vessels. They're requesting terms. Reed looked at the communication panel, then at the latest intelligence report scrolling across his screen. The Kalari Syndicate had been responsible for recommending civilian targets during the attacks on human colonies. Their strategic planners had specifically suggested murdering human children to break morale. Denied, Reed said simply. Continue. The operation. He had no desire to be cruel, but mercy was a luxury humanity could no longer afford. The galaxy needed to understand that there were consequences for genocide, and those consequences would be absolute and permanent. Dr. Emma Walsh joined him at the tactical display, her face grim as she reviewed the latest intelligence data. Captain, we've confirmed the scope of the conspiracy. 7 major galactic powers participated in planning the colony attacks. The Thracian Empire was just the military arm of a much larger operation. Reed nodded, unsurprised. The coordination required for simultaneous attacks across 1,000 light-years had suggested careful planning. What surprised him was the depth of the betrayal. Species that had maintained diplomatic relations with humanity for decades had been secretly planning their extermination. What's our next target? The Vorthon Republic has a major command center at Arcturus Prime. Intelligence suggests they were responsible for coordinating the timing of the attacks. General Kane wants it eliminated within 72 hours. Reed studied the tactical data for Arcturus Prime. The Vorthon Command Center was protected by orbital defense platforms and a fleet of capital ships. Under normal circumstances, assaulting it would require a massive fleet engagement with heavy casualties on both sides. But these weren't normal circumstances. Humanity was no longer fighting by galactic rules of warfare. Tom, get me a secure channel to Admiral Torres. The communication screen activated to show Torres aboard his flagship, the Earth vessel Retribution. Behind him, Reed could see the organized chaos of a fleet preparing for major operations. Ships from every human world were converging on staging areas throughout the sector. Captain Reed, report. The Kalari shipyard is neutralized, Admiral. 0 survivors among military personnel. We've documented evidence of their involvement in targeting human civilians. Torres nodded grimly. Understood. How are your crew holding up? Reed looked around his bridge, noting the determined expressions of his officers. They had volunteered for exploration missions, not military operations, but the murder of their fellow colonists had transformed them into something harder and more focused. We're ready for the next operation, sir. Good, because the next phase is beginning. We've located the primary coordination center for the entire conspiracy. The facility that planned and authorized the colony attacks is hidden in the Vega system. Reed felt his pulse quicken. For months they had been striking at the periphery of the enemy conspiracy, eliminating outposts and supply lines. Now they had found the heart of the operation. What's the target profile? A joint command facility operated by all 7 conspiracy members. It's where they planned the human containment protocol and authorized the extermination of our colonies. Intelligence suggests it's still active, coordinating efforts to hunt down human survivors throughout the Outer Rim. The implications were staggering. Somewhere in the Vega system was a facility where alien commanders were still working to complete the genocide they had started. They were hunting human refugees, planning additional attacks, and coordinating the systematic elimination of every human presence in contested space. Sir, Dr. Walsh interrupted. There's something else. We've been analyzing the data from the Kalari facility. The conspiracy goes deeper than we thought. She activated her workstation, displaying intercepted communications from the destroyed shipyard. The original plan called for complete human extinction, not just containment. They were building specialized ships designed to hunt human settlements throughout known space. The goal was to eliminate humanity as a galactic presence within 5 years. Reed felt a cold fury settle in his chest. The colony attacks hadn't been a demonstration or a territorial dispute. They had been the opening move in a campaign of complete extermination. Every human man, woman, and child in the galaxy had been marked for death. How many ships were they building? 300 hunting vessels, specifically designed with human weaknesses in mind. If they had completed construction, our remaining colonies wouldn't have had a chance. Admiral Torres leaned forward on the communication screen. Captain, you understand what this means. We're not fighting a war anymore. We're fighting for species survival against enemies who planned our complete extinction. Reed understood perfectly. The rules of civilized warfare no longer applied when the enemy's stated goal was genocide. Humanity had tried to maintain moral superiority, limiting their attacks to military targets and avoiding civilian casualties. But their enemies had never intended to show the same restraint. Admiral, what are our new operational parameters? Total war, Captain. Every species that participated in planning human extinction will face the same fate they planned for us. We're done fighting with one hand tied behind our backs. The communication ended, leaving Reed alone with his thoughts. He looked out at the burning remains of the Kalari shipyard and felt no satisfaction, only grim determination. They had crossed a line today, abandoning the moral high ground in favor of absolute victory. But the alternative was the extinction of every human in the galaxy. "Sir," Tom Bradley called out, "we're receiving new orders from Fleet Command. We're to join Battle Group 7 for the assault on Arcturus Prime." Reed nodded, then activated the ship's intercom to address his crew. "All hands, this is the captain. We've just learned that the attacks on our colonies were part of a larger plan to exterminate humanity entirely. The enemy never intended to show mercy to our civilians, and we will no longer show mercy to theirs." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle throughout the ship. "We're heading to Arcturus Prime to eliminate the Vorthan Republic's command center. This isn't about territory or politics anymore. This is about survival. Every enemy we leave alive is another threat to every human family in the galaxy." The Crimson Dawn changed course, joining the growing fleet of human vessels converging on the next target. Around them, other ships were making similar course corrections as the full scope of Operation Deep Strike became clear. Reed watched the tactical display as dozens of human fleets moved toward targets throughout enemy space. The galaxy had wanted to teach humanity about proportional response. Now they were about to learn what human proportional response actually looked like. The aliens had planned to hunt down and eliminate every human in the galaxy within 5 years. Humanity had decided to return the favor in 5 months. The storm they had unleashed was about to reach full fury, and there would be no shelter for those who had chosen to participate in genocide. The galaxy had made its choice when it decided that human extinction was an acceptable price for territorial control. Now humanity would show them the actual cost of that decision. The Thracian homeworld of Korath Prime had never been conquered in its 3,000-year history. Its orbital defense platforms could destroy entire fleets, and its surface cities were protected by energy shields that had withstood the fury of a dozen galactic wars. The planet's inhabitants had grown complacent in their invincibility, certain that their advanced technology made them untouchable. They had never faced an enemy that didn't care about their technology. General Harrison Kane stood in the observation deck of the human flagship Vengeance, watching as his fleet moved into attack position around the Thracian capital world. Below him, the planet's cities glowed like jewels against the darkness, their inhabitants unaware that their government's decision to exterminate human colonies was about to bring devastation beyond their imagination. "General," Admiral Torres reported from the bridge, "all strike groups are in position. The simultaneous assault on all 7 homeworlds begins in 30 minutes. Kane nodded, feeling the weight of history settling on his shoulders. In 30 minutes, humanity would launch the largest coordinated military operation in galactic history. 7 fleets would strike at 7 different worlds simultaneously, targeting every species that had participated in the conspiracy to eliminate humanity. What's the status of the other operations? Captain Reed's battle group has reached Vorthan Prime. Commander Hayes is leading the assault on the Kalari core worlds. All other strike forces report ready status. Kane studied the tactical display showing human fleets positioned around targets throughout the galaxy. Each operation had been planned with meticulous precision, designed to strike simultaneously so that no enemy could warn the others or coordinate a defense. Dr. Emma Walsh's voice crackled through the communication system from her position aboard the research vessel, Crimson Dawn. General, final intelligence confirms that all 7 species were active participants in planning human extinction. The facility at Vega contained complete plans for hunting down and eliminating every human settlement in known space. Kane felt no satisfaction at the confirmation, only grim determination. The evidence was overwhelming. Humanity faced enemies who had planned their complete extermination as a matter of policy. There could be no mercy for genocide, no negotiation with species that viewed human existence as incompatible with galactic Peace. Doctor, what did you find in their strategic assessments? They studied human psychology for years, General. They concluded that humans were too aggressive, too adaptable, and reproduced too quickly to coexist with established galactic civilizations. The colony attacks were just the beginning. They planned to systematically eliminate every human in space and then sterilize Earth itself. The bridge fell silent as the full scope of the alien conspiracy became clear. This hadn't been about territory or resources. It had been about the fundamental question of whether humanity deserved to exist as a spacefaring species. Sir, Communications, Officer Maria Santos interrupted. We're receiving surrender offers from the Thracian government. They're requesting negotiations. Kane looked down at Korath Prime, its cities still gleaming in ignorant peace. Denied. Continue the operation. He understood that his decision would be studied by historians for centuries, assuming humanity survived to write those histories. But the choice was simple. Species that planned genocide deserved no consideration beyond the efficiency of their elimination. All units, this is General Kane. Operation Final Answer is authorized. Begin the assault. The human fleets moved with coordination that would have impressed the aliens who had underestimated human military capability. Stealth ships disabled orbital defense platforms while battlecruisers moved into bombardment positions. Fighter squadrons swept through enemy formations like schools of predatory fish, striking with precision that left no room for effective counterattacks. Kane watched as the first orbital platforms around Korath Prime exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The Thracians had built their defenses to stop conventional galactic warfare, massed formations of capital ships engaging in prolonged battles of attrition. They had never encountered human tactics that emphasized speed, surprise, and the systematic exploitation of enemy weaknesses. Sir, Admiral Torres reported, the planetary defense grid is neutralized. We have clear approach vectors to all major population centers. Kane activated the planetary communication system, broadcasting on all Thracian frequencies. His words would be heard in every city, every military installation, every government building on the planet below. Citizens of Korath Prime, this is General Harrison Kane of the Human Defense Force. Your government participated in the planned extermination of 8.7 million human civilians. Your military forces attacked our colonies without warning or provocation, murdering our families and harvesting our genetic material like laboratory specimens. He paused, watching as the cities below began to go dark as authorities implemented emergency protocols. You wanted to demonstrate humanity's place in the galactic order. Today we demonstrate what happens when you mistake human civilization for human weakness. Your leaders chose extinction as the solution to the human problem. We are here to show them what extinction actually looks like. The bombardment began with surgical precision. Human forces had spent months studying Thracian infrastructure, identifying critical nodes in their civilization's support systems. Power, grids failed in cascading blackouts. Communication networks went silent. Transportation hubs erupted in precisely targeted explosions that left surrounding areas untouched. General, Dr. Walsh reported from orbit, we're detecting massive evacuation attempts from the major cities. Civilian populations are fleeing to rural areas. Kane nodded approvingly. Unlike their enemies, humans were not targeting civilian populations for elimination. They were dismantling the infrastructure that supported the Thracian war machine, while allowing non-combatants to escape the destruction. Sir, Torres called out. Incoming transmission from Captain Reed at Vorthan Prime. The communication screen, activated to show Reed's face, streaked with sweat and lit by weapon flashes in the background. General, the Vorthan capital has fallen. Their government surrendered after we eliminated their orbital fleet. We've secured their strategic planning, facility, and recovered complete records of the conspiracy. Kane felt a surge of satisfaction. The Vorthans had been responsible for coordinating the timing of the colony attacks, ensuring that human forces would be unable to respond effectively. Now their careful planning had been turned against them. What about the other operations? Commander, Hayes reports successful elimination of Kalari military leadership. Their remaining forces are in complete disarray. Similar reports from all other strike forces. Enemy resistance is collapsing faster than projected. Kane understood why. The alien conspirators had spent years studying human military doctrine as it existed during peacetime exploration missions. They had prepared for the humans they thought they knew, peaceful explorers who preferred negotiation to violence and limited their military responses to proportional defensive actions. They had never met the humans who emerged when their species faced extinction. "Sir," Maria Santos interrupted, "priority transmission from Earth. President Santos wants to address the fleet." The main display activated to show the president, broadcasting from the emergency command center beneath Luna Station. Behind her, Kane could see the controlled chaos of humanity's wartime government coordinating the largest military operation in their history. General Kane, Admiral Torres, and all human forces engaged in Operation Final Answer. The galaxy is watching what we do today. Our enemies expected us to respond to genocide with protests and diplomatic appeals. Instead, we have shown them that humanity's true strength was never our technology or our numbers. She paused, her voice carrying across the light years to every human ship engaged in battle. Our strength is our unwillingness to accept extinction quietly. Our strength is our ability to become exactly what our enemies force us to become. Today we demonstrate that the price of planning human genocide is the elimination of those who plan it. The transmission ended, leaving Kane alone with his thoughts as the battle raged around Korath Prime. Through the observation windows, he could see the planet's surface dotted with fires where military installations had been reduced to rubble. The Thracian fleet that had destroyed human colonies was being systematically eliminated by forces that fought with a precision and fury their enemy had never imagined possible. "Sir," Torres reported, "final resistance centers are being neutralized. Thracian military command is requesting terms for unconditional surrender." Kane considered the request for exactly 3 seconds. "Accepted. But make it clear that surrender means complete dissolution of their government and military. The Thracian Empire ends today." He activated the fleet communication system to address all human forces throughout the galaxy. "All units, this is General Kane. The primary objectives have been achieved. 7 species chose to participate in planning human extinction. Today they learned that this choice has consequences." Kane looked out at the conquered world below, feeling no joy in victory but profound satisfaction in justice. The galaxy had wanted to teach humanity about proportional response. They had learned that human proportional response to genocide was the complete elimination of those responsible. "Admiral Torres, signal all fleets to begin Phase 2 operations. Establish occupation governments on all conquered worlds, and begin implementation of the accountability protocols." The accountability protocols represented humanity's answer to the question of what to do with species that had planned genocide. Rather than simple revenge, humans would implement systematic oversight designed to ensure that such conspiracies could never form again. 3 months later, President Santos stood before the relocated Galactic Council aboard the human space station orbiting Earth. The surviving alien powers listened in stunned silence as she outlined humanity's new position in galactic affairs. For too long, this galaxy has operated under the assumption that might makes right, that established powers can eliminate emerging species whenever they become inconvenient. The attack on our colonies was intended to demonstrate humanity's weakness in our place in the cosmic order. She gestured toward the tactical displays showing human fleets now patrolling former enemy territory. Instead, it demonstrated something none of you anticipated. It showed what happens when you force a species to choose between extinction and becoming something terrible. You made that choice for us when you planned our elimination. Santos smiled, and there was nothing diplomatic about it. The galaxy wanted to teach humanity about our place in the cosmic order. We learned that lesson. Well, our place is wherever we choose to make it, and we choose to make it everywhere. The age of humanity treating other species as their superiors was over. The galaxy had made a fatal mistake when they confused human patience with human weakness. They would not make that mistake again.